Hello everyone. So I thought today I'd look through what I think might have happened in Amber Heard and Johnny Depp's decision to settle and why they're settling at the appeal stage. So first of all, there would have been some consideration to settle at the pre-trial, which is normally when you do have a settlement, if you have one. And I guess it's a bit like when you play deal or no deal and you sort of work out, all right, what do you aim to get out of it? And they're normally talking about a financial figure. So Amber Heard, with a net worth of $6 million, could have argued that she would have gone up to perhaps $2 million. She would have been happy to do that. Now, that would have been the maximum that she would have considered. And of course, she had her big counterclaim of $100 million for quite tiny things. It was just an extraordinarily high amount of money with no real basis. I mean, if he was arguing 50 million, even if it was true for her, I think even 5 million was a bit excessive for her. So, and yet 50 million was lowballing it for him. It was more 100 million just to sort of scare him off. But I don't think there was any real attempt at that, because from Amber Heard's point of view, she was looking at it thinking, well, I'm going to win. And realistically too, if she had given even a half decent testimony, in fact, even if she had refused to testify, she probably would have won. And it really was very much an uphill battle. So from her point of view, why would she bother? And from his point of view, there was really no gain from him getting, well, $2 million out of her, which is about as much as he could have hoped to get. Or $1 million. And she was never going to say. So a pre-trial settlement was never going to have her say, oh no, I'm guilty. Never going to do that. And realistically, if he wanted money, he would have gone after the divorce bit, which he would have won much more easily. So once we got the trial finished, and we're now at the appeal stage, and she's allowed to have an appeal according to the state of Virginia rules. Everybody's allowed to have an appeal. So she was going to have one. She'd presented this 16-point brief. Then she had the 55 pages, and she sneakily added an extra 98 pages on top of that with amici briefs, which essentially acted to sort of make it 153 pages, I think it was, in total, which his lawyers had to respond to, and they were not happy with having to respond to that. Benjamin Chew just said, look, I don't want to have to deal with this. The court should throw it out. Now, we didn't hear what Johnny Depp's side was going to answer in response to her actual brief. So maybe they'd done it already, maybe they hadn't. We'd only heard their response to the amici brief. We'd also heard Amber Heard's side response to Johnny Depp's side, which realistically was a bit of a weak response. They were essentially saying, all right, well, we don't think you'll win, but they couldn't really answer it very well. And Johnny Depp's side had not really bothered to answer hers yet. They'd just done the amici brief. Now, perhaps why we got this settlement is that Johnny Depp's side had started to draft a response, and were looking at the 16 that they had to draft, and they were going, well, you don't have a case. And perhaps they sent some early drafts to her side, to her lawyers, to this Ballard and Spahr people, and said, look, seriously, these are such weak arguments. We don't think you have any prospect. And they would look at what they would view as the strongest. And lawyers usually get along with other lawyers. This is just something people don't realise. You might be on defence, you might be on prosecution, you're usually friends with each other. It's quite unusual for lawyers not to hate each other. They might put their big arguments on behalf of their client, but they're not actually against the other side. They're friends with each other. And it'd be quite normal for Johnny Depp's lawyers to have a chat to Amber Heard's lawyers. They were upset with Elaine, only Elaine, not the rest of her legal defence in the trial proper, just because Elaine went against the normal rules. And that was what they were upset about. Not that she was representing Amber Heard, they were quite happy with the other lawyers representing her, just Elaine. And only because she went against the normal rules, and that's it. So they wouldn't be upset with Ballard Spahr. They've probably gone against them a few times, maybe even been on the same side once or twice. And so it would have been quite normal to send them an email or call them up and say, hey, look, we've looked at your case, we've done a proper analysis, and we're sort of scratching our head about this. Why have you got 16 when really only 2 of them have any prospect at all? Those 2 being the medical records and the damages. That's it. And the damages, probably if you analysed it, is actually a bit on the low side. That if she's arguing about damages being too high, it could open the door for the judges to turn it around the other way and increase it to what the jury actually asked for, of 15 million. And so what are you doing? Even if you had that retrial with the extra claims in there, with the extra medical records, well, if you did have that, they'd probably want more of other things as well. In fact, they'd probably say, let's include everything that was excluded. Let's make this new jury aware of everything that everyone's aware of. And they're saying, but if you did that, they'd be as aware as the people on the internet are, 95% of whom are taking Johnny Depp's side. It's not going to be the ones that are just the media. It's going to be a general look. And of course, if you did that, they're probably going to say, all right, well, once we include the UK judgment in here, we're not restricted by a 2018 thing. We can go right back to 2016. We can ignore the UK judgment because that only proved that the Sun newspaper didn't lie. It didn't prove that Amber Heard didn't. So we can go back to 2016 with the damages. We can make it 210 million. And yeah, Amber Heard loses worse. And that would be the likely result. Even if you included everything in there, everything that she could possibly have in there, it's probably going to make it worse for her. And so the best scenario really is just to reduce the damages, because she doesn't want a retrial. Not really. She might say she does, but she doesn't. She just wants the Court of Appeal to overturn the verdict and award it in her favour, which they're never going to do. The only grounds that they would do that is if they said, well, UK judgment's there, so let's just have it. Or if it was held in California, we wouldn't have to have any discovery. And therefore she would have won without discovery, or probably. Most likely she would have. But there would have been mistakes, errors in law, so she wants to reintroduce errors. That's not going to happen. So they would just say, look, really, realistically, is there any chance we can get a reduction in the damages? And Johnny Depp's team would say, hey, look, yeah, we can. He doesn't even want the money, he just wants his life back. We'll just give it to you, but you're going to have to give us some token amount. And they say, yeah, what's the token amount? What's the minimum? They'd probably say 2 million to start with. They say, oh, you're going to reduce it from 10 to 2, and then Amber's side would have said, okay, what about 500,000? And they would have said, oh, you mean $1 million? Yep, shake hands, it's $1 million. She's happy with $1 million, he's happy with $1 million. $1 million's a token amount, but it's enough. Like, he could have just asked for $1, but it's enough that, you know, it's a substantial token. For everyday people, $1 million is a lot of money. For these people, not that much. Probably would have been a lot for Amber Heard before she met Johnny Depp, when her net worth was pretty much zero. She was struggling even to make a full-time living out of this, but nowadays $1 million is quite a bit. And whether the insurance company would pay that $1 million, as is reported, we don't know. But that's sort of the agreement that we'd have. So is this going to hurt Johnny Depp? No. He's not admitting anything. She hasn't won. He's still in the same position as he was with the original verdict. It essentially acts, from his point of view, to win the court case. But does it hurt Amber Heard? Well, no. She can live her life, and she can also tell this lie that she's won, which she wants to do. And if she went ahead with the appeal and lost as dramatically as she probably would have, she wouldn't be able to say that. She'd be gagged. And she'd also probably lose $210 million if they went ahead with the whole thing. So why doesn't Johnny Depp want to go ahead with the appeal? And the main reason is because he's 59 years old. Sure, he can keep acting till he dies, pretty much, but eventually he's going to get into old man roles, and you know, he might still want to do some young man roles for a while. He might want to get back into it, because this is all putting on pause essentially all of his acting abilities. And it could be 5 years before the appeal is all fleshed out properly. That's 5 years where he can't do anything. So that's why they'd agree to it. Does he want more money? Well, he says he doesn't. I think he does, but he'd want a lot more than 10 million. He'd want his 210 million, which he's never going to get. So, you know, he may as well just settle for a token amount. And I think this is a settlement that works for both sides, and it's a good agreement. They can both say they won. That's great. That's what you want. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye-bye now.